So today we're going to dig into a really powerful argument from the book Orphaned. It makes the case that for decades now, the American family has kind of been left behind, caught in the crossfire of some huge economic and political forces. The core idea is that big decisions made, way up in Washington have had these massive and often pretty devastating effects on families just trying to make it all across the country.
All right, so this story really kicks off back in the year 2000. The book points to this as a critical moment in time when a major political promise was made, one that the author says basically set the stage for this huge economic and social earthquake for millions of American families.
So picture this, it's a spring day in Washington, D.C., and President Clinton is making this huge case for normalizing trade with China. And the promises, they were huge. He's talking about advancing economic freedom, promoting human rights over in China, and, most importantly for everyone back home, creating a future of much, much greater prosperity.
But what actually happened? Well, instead of that promised prosperity, the author points to what economists now call the China shock. The book argues that this one trade deal ended up leading to over 2 million Americans losing their jobs, and these were mostly working-class men. So for so many families, that promise of a brighter future, it turned into a really devastating reality.
And the impact wasn't just about money or jobs. In the very communities that were hit the hardest, the social fabric itself just started to unravel. The book documents a drop in new marriages, falling birth rates, a rise in unwed motherhood, and, tragically, a big increase in what are now called deaths of despair, things like drug overdoses.
Okay, so this gets us to the core diagnoses in the book. Because beyond that one trade deal, the author argues that there are these deeper, more powerful forces at play that are systematically, weakening the American family. The central question that just hangs in the air after the China shock is this: what on earth happened to men's jobs? We're talking especially about men without a college degree, who, for generations, could pretty much count on having stable work to provide for a family. And when you look at the data, wow, it really tells a story. This chart shows the share of prime-age men, so guys between 25 and 54, without a college degree who aren't employed full-time. That number shot up from 16% back in the mid-70s to 25% by 2021. Think about that. Today, 1 in 4 of these men are not in the full-time workforce.
So what's driving all this? The book identifies 3 really powerful institutions as major culprits in this growing disconnect between men and work: big education, big government, and big tech. Let's start with big education. The argument here is that our whole system just overwhelmingly favors the college track. The book points to figures from the Department of Education showing that it spends about 79 times more on colleges and universities than it does on vocational education. The author argues this leaves millions of young men who aren't college-bound without a clear path to a good-paying job.
Then you've got big tech. The argument is that its products are almost like electronic opiates, distracting young men from school and from work. This quote from a Silicon Valley insider is frankly pretty shocking. He's talking about the addictive power of tech on kids' brains, the very thing he and other tech execs apparently work hard to shield their own kids from.
And it's not just about declining work for men. Even for families where both parents are working, the financial squeeze is just intense. Sure, stuff like TVs have gotten cheaper, but the big-ticket items, the things you actually need for a family, like housing, healthcare, childcare, those costs are just spiraling out of reach for so many people.
So how does all this financial pressure crash into government policy? Well, check out this quote from a working-class father named Mark Payne. He and his partner, Lisa, they literally sat down and ran the numbers, and they realized that if they got married, it would cost them about $600 a month in lost benefits. That's an amount they just couldn't afford to lose.
This is what's known as a marriage penalty. Basically, it's a situation baked into our tax and welfare systems that can make it financially irrational for a lower-income couple to get married. It effectively punishes them for doing the one thing that society says is best for raising kids.
So who's to blame for all this? Well, the author makes a really interesting point here. They argue this isn't a problem caused by just one party. It's a bipartisan failure of our entire political class. According to the book, both sides of the aisle get it wrong. The right is criticized for a laissez-faire, hands-off approach that kind of assumes tax cuts and GDP growth will magically fix everything, often putting corporations ahead of families. And the left gets criticized for status programs that can end up penalizing marriage and for pushing a workist agenda that often ignores what parents actually want.
And you can really see this disconnect when you look at childcare. The data shows that a combined 58% of parents would prefer to have a parent or family member care for their kids at home.
And yet, the author notes, a lot of policies, especially those from the left, heavily push and subsidize institutional daycare, which is only the first choice for about 18% of parents.
Okay, so after laying out all these problems, the book doesn't just leave us hanging. It pivots to a whole set of concrete solutions, which it frames as a family-first agenda.
And this agenda is broken down into 5 key policy goals. Think of it like a roadmap. It covers everything from changing how we educate young people, to giving direct financial support for raising kids, to getting rid of those government penalties against marriage, and even promoting a clear cultural script for how to achieve stability.
So a huge piece of this plan is an expanded child tax credit. The proposal is for $350 a month for every child under 6 years old. This would give families direct cash support to help cover the incredibly high costs of raising young kids, whether they use it for childcare or to make it possible for one parent to stay home. And to get rid of that marriage penalty we talked about, the book suggests a pretty straightforward fix. For programs like Medicaid, just double the income limits for married parents compared to single parents. The whole goal is to stop financially punishing people for getting married. Now, another big part of the plan is promoting something called the success sequence. It's a pretty simple framework for young adults. Step 1, get at least a high school diploma. Step 2, get a full-time job. And step 3, get married before you have children.
And the data on this, according to the author's research, is just staggering. Young adults who follow these 3 steps have only a 3% chance of ending up in poverty. So the idea here is to use public campaigns to basically teach this sequence as a clear, proven pathway to a stable life. And this all leads us to the final, really provocative question the book leaves us with. In a country that seems to be splitting into 2 different worlds when it comes to family, is this the future we're willing to accept? A future where having a strong, stable family is a luxury that's only available to a select few? It's a challenging question for sure, and one that really gets to the heart of this whole issue.